Once your vehicle is raised and supported safely, you're going to remove all 6 lug nuts. Now that the wheel's out of the way, let's continue on by removing this right here. Just pull that down. It depends on how far you want to go to get it out of your way. That looks pretty decent for now. That exposes the nut right here. We're going to spray this with some penetrant. Now you can either loosen up this upper bolt right here so the control arm can move up and down, and that'll make it a little bit easier, or you can leave it tight and then you won't necessarily have to worry about readjusting it and retorquing it at the end. The next thing we're going to do is use a 19mm wrench. We're going to come right up here on this bolt. Then you're going to use your 19mm socket, remove this nut. Let's get this locking clip off of here. Just take your pocket screwdriver, grab underneath the ear, pull it away, and then draw this out. I'll show you what I'm talking about. That's what it looks like. So I came in with my flathead, I pulled this away, and then I pulled out the cotter pin. The next thing I want to do is remove this bolt right here. Just want to be careful because usually they freeze up inside the control arm. Got it. That gives us plenty of slack right there. If you feel like you need more, you can take off the bracket that comes down here as well. The next thing we're going to do is remove the nut from the sway bar link so we can get this off of here. Let's try to pull the stud. Do the same for the other side. Now we have a nice clear view and an access area to get this nut off. I like to take my nut, I'll just start it on there, just a couple threads. That's going to prevent this from falling down once this breaks free. Let's go ahead and bonk right on the knuckle right here. Just going to try to break this free from each other. Alright, that's enough. Take off that nut. Should be able to lift this up and carefully pull this aside. Now when you do this, you want to be careful not to put a tug on your ABS wire, leave a little bit of slack, and of course your brake hose as well. Just go ahead and get the knuckle off of the upper ball joint on the other side as well. Now that we have the other side off, we can go ahead and lift this up. Kind of moves things out of the way. That looks pretty good. The next thing we need to do is remove these 3 top mounting nuts. I'm going to start with the forward 2, and then as I start unscrewing the rearward one, I'm going to bring down the shock to give myself more room between the body. Nice. What I like to do is I just like to take one of these nuts and just put it right on top, just a couple threads, so that way there, once we get out the bottom bolt and we separate this up here, you don't have to worry about the strut coming out and potentially hurting you. The next thing we're going to do is grab our 19mm wrench, put it right on here to hold the bolt so it can't spin on us. Use your 19mm socket and take off this nut. Let's grab our punch and a hammer and just finish getting this bolt out of here. Watch your fingers. So now we're just going to take our pry bar and see if we can pry this out of the lower control arm. Be careful for any pinch points. Nice. Next, what we want to do is take our pry bar, just get right in between here and see if you can break this free. There we are. Let's get this off of here. Slide out that lower portion, bring it down, and then just kind of do whatever you need to do to get it out of the area. Okay, so once you've replaced the part and you know that it has the same length as your original, go ahead and take off these upper nuts. We're going to start putting it into the body of the vehicle here. So once you've compared your new shock to your old shock and you know you have the same length, let's go ahead and install. Come right in from the bottom first, see about sliding it down, lift up my control arm, line up those 3 upper bolts, but before I start the nuts, just take a peek at the bottom, make sure that's lined up as well. If the hole is not lined up and maybe it's facing in the opposite direction, you need to spin the shock. Let's go ahead and start in all 3 of those upper nuts real quick, but we're not going to tighten them down yet. Okay, let's just bottom out all 3 of these nuts. The next thing we need to do, once we have those snugged up, is come right here with a pry bar. You're going to go in between this cam bolt right here and your lower control arm, and you're going to carefully pry. And when we pry, we're going to try to force that control arm down so we can line up this bolt hole. It's close. I'm just going to keep trying until it lines up, and then I'm going to put my bolt through. So now you want to have a punch handy and your rubber mallet handy, because as we try to line this up, as soon as it gets close, I'm going to try to drive my punch right through, and then I'll wiggle it around to try to line up the holes. All right, I'm starting to see a hole here. I can go just like that. That looks great. Now I'm going to bring the bolt from the rear to the front. Go ahead and grab your washer and your nut. Put the washer on there. If you want to use a tiny bit of thread locker, we'll call it your prerogative. Start on that nut. I'm going to hold the bolt side with my 19mm wrench again, just like I used to take it off. And now we're going to snug this up. Don't over tighten it because we're going to be torquing this in the upper portion to manufacturer's specifications. Anytime you do a shock of any sort, it's always a great idea to do them as a pair. With that said, now's a perfect time to go ahead and do the other side front. The process for it would be the same exact as this side. Go ahead and torque these upper nuts to 47 foot-pounds. Of course, the rear one's going to be a little bit harder to get to, but if you can't get it with the torque wrench, just go ahead and make sure it's nice and tight with a wrench. Now it's time to go ahead and torque this lower nut right here. We're going to torque it to 100 foot-pounds. Torqued. Now, assuming you've already done what you needed to do on the other side, we're going to continue on. To tighten up your upper control arm so it's not going to flop around like this, you don't want to leave it down. You need to actually have it at approximately the ride height if the vehicle was sitting on the ground. And then you would go ahead and snug this up, and then we'll torque it to manufacturer's specifications. Let's hold this side with our 19mm wrench and go ahead and snug this one up. And we're going to torque this to 85 foot-pounds. Torqued. Let's go ahead and pull this over. We're going to try to pull down on your control arm. If you can't get it far enough down, well, don't get too worried. We'll use a pry bar and use some leverage. Use your 19mm socket, snug this up. Let's torque this to 81 foot-pounds. Once it's torqued, you need to make sure that your castle nut portion lines up with the cotter pin hole. If it does not, you need to continue tightening until it does. That looks pretty great. Let's get our cotter pin in there. Slide that through and lock it in. The next thing we're going to do is put in this little bolt to hold this in. If you want to use a little copper never sees, it's probably a great idea. Go ahead and snug that up. Okay, bottomed out, teeny bit more. That's great. Let's get the sway bar link back into the knuckle. Make sure you put on your washer first, just like that. It's easy to forget. We're going to line this up, start in the nut just like that. And then of course, now's a great time to go over and do the same on the other side before you snug this up. Go ahead and hold that. We're just going to bottom this out, and then we'll torque it to 52 foot-pounds. Now the process for this will be the same on the other side of the vehicle. Okay, we're cruising. Let's get the wheel back up on here. And of course, get all your lug nuts on and started. Let's go ahead and bottom out all the lug nuts. Okay, now we're going to do the same to the other side, and then we're going to torque them to manufacturer's specifications. All right, let's go ahead and torque the wheel in a crisscross pattern to 83 foot-pounds. Torqued.